wrote Acts. It's the second volume of a 2-volume set, and it was, and it was written by Luke. So if you read all of Luke, then you get to the end, then you should then skip John and go right into Acts. Because it's written by the same person. Now, what do we know about Luke? He was a physician. Let's go back to the birth narratives. Do you all, I gave you a little tip that says Matthew was the male perspective in the birth narrative, and Luke is the ladies, right? Matthew, male, Luke, ladies. Is the ladies' perspective. He has the focus on Mary. So it makes it really interesting today that we have this reading from Acts 9. And in preparation for this, I went back all the way to the beginning and I read it all the way straight through and beyond to make sure that I had the whole picture, that I hadn't forgotten. And in today's lesson, we hear about a woman named Tabitha. Tabitha is the Aramaic name, and Dorcas is the Greek name. And she was a very interesting woman. She must have had some wealth. She most likely was either a widow or a single woman, because she was a seamstress. And in her ministry, what she did was make clothing for the widows. And the widows were people who were forgotten, really. These are the widows and the children are the people that Jesus is always talking about. These are the fringe people that we're supposed to pay attention to. These are the ones that we're supposed to embrace, along with the hungry and the sick. And Tabitha made clothes for them and gave them to the widows. What an amazing ministry. So she must have been well-to-do. She clearly was well-loved. She was probably fairly young, I would imagine, younger than the people she was serving, the widows were. And suddenly she becomes sick, and she dies. Now, interestingly enough, in the scripture refers to her as a female disciple. Tabitha is a female disciple. And it is the only place in the New Testament where that Greek word is shown in that way. She is a female disciple. I thought that was amazing. I was inspired. And I was actually kind of excited. I was also a little saddened that, Mary sits at the feet of Jesus and is learning from him. She washes his feet with oil and dries it with her hair. Mary Magdalene walks with Jesus all of the way. The women were there at the cross waiting. And in all of those different scenarios, never were they called a female disciple. But Tabitha is called a female disciple. So we got one. That's good. Because clearly, there were enough, this is a mixed group of people. There were men and there were women. Now, the women had surrounded Tabitha, as was the tradition. They had, because of her death, they had taken her to the upper room. They had disrobed her, washed her, put clean clothes on her, and had surrounded her and were sorrowful and were crying. And the men's job during that time was to build a coffin. We have a great cabinet maker here. They build a coffin and dig a hole for that. That was their responsibilities. But two men knew that Peter wasn't very far away in Lydia. And they said, let's go get Peter. Because he knew Jesus. So they went and they got him. And their exhortation to him is very small. Please don't delay. Come quickly. Come. And so he gets himself together and he goes. And I would imagine along the way they explained to him what the circumstances were. Peter gets there. He goes to the upper room, which is kind of an interesting, I think, parallel. Where else do we hear about an upper room? The Last Supper, exactly. So I don't know if that's intentional or not, but that's what the imagery that comes to me in mind is. He goes to the upper room, and there she is, and he asks everyone to leave. Now, there are several other stories that are reminiscent of this. We have Jairus' daughter, where Jairus comes and says to Jesus, please come quickly, because my daughter is ill. And eventually someone comes to him and says, hey, don't bother him anymore because she's already dead. But Jesus comes, doesn't he? And he brings several of the disciples with him, and they go into the room, and when they do that, they ask everyone else, all the mourners, to leave. So the parents and Jesus and the disciples are the only ones in the room. Peter asks those to leave, and he does. And it says specifically that he got down on his knees. He assumed a position of reverence, of humility, of humbleness, and he prays. And when he looks up, he realizes that she is alive. And he takes her hand and helps her to get up. When Jesus was in the room with Jairus' daughter, he says, Tabitha cum, which means, little girl, get up. And this young woman's name is Tabitha. And Peter prayed, and she came back. She was no longer dead. She got a second chance. And it seems that in this scenario, Peter got a second chance too. Because, it wasn't too long ago that Peter was having some really difficult times. I mean, Peter's the one who, when addressed by the servant, the young woman says, aren't you one of his disciples? He says, woman, I don't know what you're talking about. So in a very short period of time, we've come from someone who's having a hard time claiming who Jesus is, to being empowered to do ministry in his name that's transformation. So it looks like Peter has had a second chance as well. Now, if we think about the stories that we've talked about since the resurrection of Jesus, we talked about Thomas, and we talked about Judas. Now, Thomas, do you think Thomas got a second chance? Well, you guys are, I know it's raining, but didn't Thomas get a second chance? I mean, right? Yeah. I knew you were with me. Okay. So, yeah, Thomas gets a second chance because, he's not there when Jesus comes, and Jesus could have just kind of gone, Thomas wasn't here, I'm headed out, But he comes back for him, doesn't he? He says, Thomas, come here, because I want you to see this. And then Thomas goes, my Lord and my God. And he leaves. So Thomas got a second chance. Judas didn't get a second chance. Judas committed suicide, according to the text. And before he had an opportunity to have a second chance, he was gone. And then the next week, who do we talk about? Paul and Ananias, right? Certainly Paul has a second chance, right? I mean, here Paul is fire and brimstone. He's the one who says that, yeah, you all want to kill Stephen? Yeah, he's the part of the way. I'm not going to stop you. Go ahead. 2, what happens? He gets a second chance, doesn't he? Jesus shuts him down. He said, you know what? You need a break. And I'm going to give you one right here. My son, 3 days. Close your eyes. Take an internal inventory. Figure it out. And he did. Ananias, Jesus says, Ananias, I got this guy over here, and he needs a second chance. And he goes, do you know who that dude is? He says, he's killing people. He's binding them up and taking them back to Jerusalem. If he even knows I'm affiliated with you, my time could be up. Jesus gives Ananias a second chance and says, I'm going to be with you. Now go. And he did. Paul's sight was restored. And now people are afraid because he's preaching about the way. How do you have such an amazing second chance? How do you have such an amazing turn of events? So we have Jairus' daughter, we have Tabitha. Who else has been raised from the dead? Lazarus, exactly. All three of them have been raised from the dead. They all had a second chance. But the interesting thing is that it's not a forever chance. It's just a second chance. Because eventually their bodies gave out and were given back to the ground, ashes to ashes and dust to dust. But Jesus was resurrected. Jesus' body is different. Jesus will never die. And Jesus provides us with the opportunity all of the time for a second chance. Each and every one of us who are walking with Christ from the beginning of our baptism have an open invitation for a second chance. You want to make it better? I'm here and I'll help you. There are several expectations. The expectation is that we're sorry for the first chance. You know, we've made some mistakes. We haven't done the things that we should have done. Or we've done some things that maybe we shouldn't have done. And when we're sorry for them, or when we head in another direction, Jesus says, second chance, I'm right here. I'm going to help you. I'm going to make it better. I think maybe one of the reasons that the other women in the text were never called a female disciple is because Tabitha had it just the way Jesus wanted it to be. Because Tabitha's ministry was in service to others. She not only knew what it meant to be a follower of Christ in her heart and in her head through education and understanding, but she put that ministry in practice. And so she took care of the widows. She loved them. She clothed them. She was their family. Ultimately, I think that's what Christ asks of each and every one of us. To look for those people who are lonely. To look for those people who need to be clothed. To look for those people who need to be cared for. Because that's what he's calling all of us to do. And he celebrates us and rewards us when we walk in that path. And if we're not, we always can have a second chance.